Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, and here joining me all season long is my good friend Dave White. Uriah Heep brought us together, but we stayed for the music. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Scott. I'm back. How you doing?
I'm doing great. You know, last episode was just, there was like no music to talk about.
But it was a fun episode.
It was a very fun episode. I really enjoyed learning about the websites and the history and all that. And today, you know what today is? It's Monday.
Today is Monday. So
before we get started on anything, we got a little house cleaning to do. First of all, I didn't mention this last week, but if you guys have not gotten your Everyday Rocks box set, I know that they are running out of some of the sizes of shirts and that. So the quantities are getting limited. But I love mine. This is such a masterpiece for a box set. What do you think of it?
I think they're great. For the Uriah Heep fan, they're great. If it's got everything in it that you want to have, that you couldn't have before.
And it's heavy.
It's heavy, right?
It weighs heavy on my shelf. So go to uriah-heep.com. where someone I know has put a lot of work into that website, and you can click on the link and you can purchase it there. They also let you know which ones are no longer available because those t-shirt sizes have sold out. Also, you could get the Choices box set. This is the expanded Choices edition with a couple of extra CDs from the more current band members. Just great packages. I really think that they're very unique from all the other things I've seen out there. And for collectors or even people that just want to get into Uriah Heep and see what they're all about, I think either box set would be great.
Very nice set of collectibles for everybody.
Definitely. So thank you, BMG, for putting those out. And you know, guys, we have some patrons that we need to thank. They help keep this show together, help me pay for keeping it on the air. And those folks are at the $5 easy living tier. We have Kenny Wymore and Brad D. You know, I got to say, Kenny is like he's like my safety net, because whenever there's anything that goes wrong on the show that I didn't catch, or even on my other podcast, the Haskincast podcast, he's like, hey, I don't know if anybody told you yet, but I can't hear any of the music. And so he's always the first one to let me know that there's a problem. So thank you on top of everything else. Thank you for that, Kenny. At the $3 The Wizard tier, we have Peter Voss, Frank Thielgard Mortensen, and William Rose. And of course, at the $1 Traveler in Time tier, the only place in the world guaranteed to be disease-free, Airtight Gravesite. Thank you all very much for your very generous contributions to the show. It helps me out a lot. Very cool. And also, I do want to take a moment to thank CAKEWALK by BANDLAB, the DAW that I choose to do this show in, both of my shows in actually. Podbean is the company that hosts the show, and they distribute it out to all the wonderful places where you are listening to it right at this very moment. My graphic artist, Scott Ladzinski, who did an amazing job on the logos. Audionamix, who I will not do a podcast without their wonderful product, IDC. And for those of you that are live broadcasters, there is a new product that was just introduced at the NAB show. That's NAB show that's here in Vegas, the National Association of Broadcasters. They have connected with another company and actually put out an instant dialogue cleaner for live applications. So go check that out at the Audionamix website. And that's a pretty cool thing for people that are live. iZotope, of course, for their D-Click in the RX products. Waves for their vocal writers, Sibilance and DeBreath. And of course, Sonitus, the compressor. All of those tools are fun that I use on the show to help it sound as good as I can make it, aside from my crazy little voice. And last but not least, my brothers in the Deep Dive Podcast Network. We have Nate and John at the Deep Purple Podcast, the Simple Man at Skinnerd Reconsidered, Terry T-Bone Mathley at T-Bone's Prime Cuts on the Other Side, Rye at Sabbath's Bloody Podcast, Paul, Joe, and David at the In the Lap of the Pods Podcast, Andy and Matt at Hawk Binge, Eric and Jonathan at Maiden A to Z Pod, Daniel and Josh at Diary of the Madman, the ultimate Aussie podcast, Ben and Sam at Universally Speaking, the Red Hot Chili Peppers podcast, George and Tom at the Metal Gods podcast, Mark and Corey at And the Podcast Will Rock, John and Corey at Backtracks, Aerosmith Revisited, and someone you know who is a host of this show may be a guest on an up-and-coming episode of that show. And last but not least, Clay and Rye at North by South. And, of course, we can't forget Brandon at Metallicast and Allegra at GottaHear'Em.all.com and the band's manager, Ace Trump, Ace on Music, which you can find on Stitcher and YouTube. Links are on the website. Go check them out. They are all fantastic shows. That's a mouthful. And it gets longer every time we add somebody else to the Deep Dive Podcast Network. It just gets harder to get through that without making a mistake.
Yeah, but you have it memorized. That's fantastic.
I wish that were the case. I'm reading it.
I've seen that. That's amazing. Well done.
That's just, thank you very much. That's just too much for my dwindling brain to remember. But all great shows. I've checked them all out. All wonderful people. Really honored to be a part of the network. I've been on there since just before the show began. And yeah, check out all those podcasts, guys. But we're not here to talk about that anymore. Today, we are here to talk about Love Machine. Was this song written about you, Dave?
It was not. Was it written about you?
I don't think so. Let's see. I would have been... when did this come out? Love Machine was what, 72 or 73? So I would have just been about a year old at the most.
I was in France that week.
Maybe they saw potential in me.
That's we'll remember.
Now, what are your feelings on this song? Is this one of your favorites? One of your, take it or leave it songs?
I like it a lot, actually. So, yeah, Love Machine's a cool song. It's fast. It's got everything in it that you want. It's a little funky. Great performances from Gary Thain and those guys. So yeah, I mean, it's one of my favorite songs. I wouldn't put it up with July Morning or anything like that, or with the ones that the comic heat from this era. But I do like the song a great deal.
I think one thing that's interesting about the songs that you typically pick out to be your favorites, like Circle of Hands, July Morning, those songs are really like epic stories. Like they're like novels that you're reading, and the rest of them are just they're short stories. So I think there's a thing in you that gravitates towards like a more epic adventure.
Thing in me that does, for sure. Yeah, this is more like a news article. News article.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And interestingly, thinking about the set list for the show, this is the second double shuffle that appears on the album, because you've got Easy Livin' and then Love Machine. So that's kind of an interesting thing to have two double shuffles in a show.
That's the way they wrote it. That's the way they wanted to present it. Good job, guys. I remember way back. I always liked this song. It's a cool song.
Now, before I begin the song, I will preface it, as I always do, with the fact that I have not heard this in 30 years. But I can say, just knowing the album version of this as well as I do, I could see why it would be a great song to do live. It's got a lot of energy. It just kind of explodes the whole song.
You let me know. I think this is a hair faster than the album.
Okay. And that's pretty typical. I mean, it's not uncommon for a band to do that. I was surprised how slow July Morning was. I thought it would have been a faster version, but they were really well tempoed on that.
Yeah, super job.
I don't know if well-tempoed is a word, but it is now.
Well, it's well-tempoed for the time, for the place, for the album release. This is the same way. You let me know if this is faster.
All right. Well, let's dig right in now. It's going to sound a little weird just at the beginning, and the reason for that is because, of course, in the digital age, you have to have file IDs, and the file IDs have to start and stop somewhere when you go from one song to another. And although there are some albums that found ways around splitting a file ID in the middle of a continuing song. So what we've got is we've got The Magician's Birthday going right into Love Machine. So if you're listening to the LP version, there's no pause at all. If you're listening to, your download off of iTunes or Amazon, there's separate file IDs. So even if your player is playing it as a set list, you're still going to have like that second gap in between the two. So it's kind of an awkward transition when you're not listening to the LP. So it's going to sound a little awkward when we begin. I like this intro.
Great intro. This is great. You haven't heard Mick come in there with a super wop. This is a great start to this.
Mm-hmm. I could tell you that this is a fun lick to play on a keyboard.
It actually goes on for quite a while.
Oh, does it? Okay. But it's fun to play because it just has that, you're going across the fingers and then you have the chords and you're going back across the fingers. It's like a really just delightful, fun thing physically to play.
I've done it. Yes, it is.
And you got a great beat kicking the song in. I was expecting people to be clapping by now.
I think they were probably. We don't hear them, but
it could be. I mean, the keyboard's pretty loud in the mix, so it might be drowning them out a little bit too.
Can you imagine how loud this must have been there?
Oh.
This is an intro to a full-blown song coming at you at full speed. I bet it was really loud.
Especially when it kicks in. Okay, that is the loudest Mick has been this whole show.
Little manic, yeah. He's very fuzzed out. He's very heavy wah. Pretty loud in the mix, gotta say.
He's on fire with his playing, though.
I don't know what night this would have been, but this sounds like later in the concert to me for some reason. It sounds like they're doing it, but they're like a little maybe worn out. It isn't as crisp sounding to me. I don't know what that means, but it's just my impression.
I love the sound though, and I'm guessing this is the wah pedal that gives it that sort of alien sound.
Yeah, and he's got a. I think he always tweaked them and doesn't tell anybody, but it's got a lot of wah travel to it. It's extremely expressive for for a while.
Yeah, it is, and I imagine most of this is just played with his fingers on the neck.
Yes.
See, I'm learning stuff about guitar.
You are. He's playing every note. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's see where it goes next. Because already the energy in the song is phenomenal.
Does this seem like it's a bit sloppy yet?
I haven't noticed that. I was just kind of mesmerized by the power that I was hearing. But let me check. We'll see as it goes further. Oh, I like that. That was super cool.
Yeah, it's extremely distorted in this. Maybe more than he wanted to be, but it's too late to change it. He sounds like he's really overblown with that. Mick does.
Yeah, he is coming through. Like I've not heard any. The whole song is a little bit louder, I think, than everything we've heard so far. But he's especially really pushing that envelope.
It's also got a few of the chords from Gypsy in the same places that they have in Gypsy. It sounds like the same, not the same beginning, but it's the 1 and 5 thing that they're doing. I wonder if they knew that when they wrote it.
I would say it is slightly faster. Not a whole lot faster, but slightly. I do definitely feel an increase in the tempo.
I think if it was slower, it might have been a bit more dramatic, but it's not that kind of a song. I can envision one being slower and coming out fine, but this is pretty quick to me. This is pretty quick.
I'm thinking too, they're coming off just doing The Magician's Birthday. They did Look at Yourself before that. They're probably just really hyped up. It's getting towards the end of the show, so they're maybe pushing that, let's take the energy we've got left and give it all we've got. Yeah, I don't know. Well, before I talk about how much I love Mick's solo, we got to talk about Gary. I love those runs he's doing.
Everywhere he needs to be. I keep saying he does songs within a song. It's just when he's some like up and down fretboard. Everything always ends up in the right place. Never hits the wrong note. Really good feel for the type of song it is.
It's almost like he knows where the one is, and he just does whatever he wants. But when he's at that one, he goes right to where he needs to be to meet that one.
Always gets there. Always get there at the right time. Yeah, Mick's solo, I'll tell you, it's like crystal clear. I don't think he missed a millimeter of that pick against his string. That is really well played.
And I love his ability to ride on one note for a while, like he does at the beginning of the solo before he goes, in whatever direction he's going to. But he's a really patient guitarist when it comes to that.
He is. He's very disciplined. Even back then, much more disciplined now. But back then, now he's doing performances that are 30 years, 40 years in, and he's like, I think he thinks the fans want to hear him. Back then, this was all brand new, and he's very disciplined.
Yeah, and he, he's like I said, I always call him a generous guitarist because a lot of times he would take a back seat to the other instruments, whether it be the keyboard or a vocal or something like that. But when he would step up front, he was fully present there, always interesting to listen to. I don't know of a lot of guitarists that would do that. Usually, they want to be more in the spotlight.
He just has a way of doing it right. What kind of God? What that's off of, but he's got wonderful guitar parts in that song. One of my favorites, and this is like right up there with the quality of the sound, the quality of his playing. He's just like spot on. He doesn't miss a note, doesn't miss a thing.
Yeah, it was very smooth. What kind of God was from Wake the Sleeper? Yeah,
one of my favorite albums, by the way, too. As much as one of the other ones they've ever done. But this solo, that section right there, to me is like really perfect.
Yeah, it really is. It was flawless. It was energetic. It was exciting. It was dramatic. It had all the elements for me.
Yeah, plus he's bouncing all over the place on stage. And this is the perfect mix solo. That's the way he did it. It was great.
Was he was really like physically active on stage, running around a lot?
Yeah. A lot of stuff all the time, for sure.
Okay. Interesting.
Back and forward, bending down, falling down, getting back up.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy looking Mick that you've seen in pictures and stuff, falling off the stage, all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah, occasionally breaking his arm, falling off the stage, and getting back up and finishing the show anyway. Yeah.
That's right.
I know that there was a story. I can't remember exactly what it was now, so I won't go into it. There's a video that he did where he talks about it, but how he almost died just hanging out with Keith Moon. And, you could only imagine, but Mick is like, he's been through it all.
Everywhere. He's a real rock star. He's been around for 50 years doing this shit.
It's so funny. Like the first time I interviewed him, he's just this really nice, polite guy. He's sitting at a desk. We're having a conversation. But when you think about his career as a rock musician, he embodies pretty much everything that's rock and roll.
I would think that he is somewhat cognizant of the fact that he doesn't need to release everything he remembers about everything.
Right.
He has an image to uphold as the band matures. And he wants whatever image that he portrays of himself now to actually be portrayed out to his fans. If he continually just reminisced and told all the same old stories, that would get boring.
Oh, absolutely.
The new stuff to me is not boring at all because it's new stuff. I love what he talks about now. He's talking about the things that they're doing, the things they're going to do, how he feels about stuff. But, you can read up on the internet. There's all kinds of stuff that he's been about.
Yeah, and he's so
that the band did and stuff.
And he's so polite and friendly and just very approachable.
Yeah, well, he is. He's the smiling Cheshire Cat, Mick.
Ah, I like that. Well, let's get back to the song and see where they're going to go after Mick just leaves everybody with their jaw hanging.
After he slaved them, huh? Okay.
Right. I wanted to mention that run that he does, that Gary does right at the beginning or the end of that, going into the chorus. It just goes up the scale and then drops down a couple of octaves, and that is such a dramatic change that it really brings out a lot more in the song.
I don't know what kind of music that is. I can't describe what that is, but I know exactly what you're talking about. He goes up to the next chord, but he plays 47 notes getting to the next chord.
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up on it, which is like 47 notes from where he was when he got to the end of that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love those drops like that.
I'll bet there were 30 notes in there. Seriously. I mean, think about it.
It wouldn't surprise me.
I'll bet there were 30 notes from where he started to where he ended, and then went back down to where he started.
Well, because he's playing triplets, though, isn't he? It's like da 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 da.
His fingers, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no ping pong, yeah.
Right, yeah. Such an amazing player.
Tough to do.
Unless you're Gary Thain. Then it's just like, you could do that while you're having breakfast. And it just seems like it comes so naturally for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so in a 3.5 minute song, or not, 3.5 minutes, you get a great solo from Mick, you get a killer solo from Ken, all squeezed into this short time frame.
Yeah, we got about a minute left, right? Yeah. Gary's been in there. I mean, everybody's done something on the solo part except Lee.
Yeah, and Lee's actually really contributed a lot, because when the chorus ends and it gets to go into the next part, he's doing some really more elaborate fills. He's definitely all energy on this song.
He is. No question about it. I think he really enjoyed this song the way it sounds.
I feel like as a drummer, I can say this is a really fun song to play.
Sure. It can solo. You really couldn't hear it a whole lot. This is one of the songs where Mick is louder than it was.
Yeah, that's true. And because there's so much distortion on the Hammond too, it's like some of that stuff, I feel like there was some dynamics that we really couldn't hear.
Yeah, it's kind of mushing it into the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is the first time that I have to say I felt that on this whole album. So I think a lot of it does have to do, you're right, with Mick's volume just kind of overtaking those frequencies. So, at that point, they're looking like they're leaving the stage. They're probably starting to wave to people, maybe grab their towels. You can feel their crowd is trying to cheer them on to do another song.
Imagine if they would have followed that with rain. He immediately went into rain.
Oh, that would be hilarious.
That was a great ending for that song. I really like that part.
Yeah, very energetic. Mick was
like, what do we do? We just stay on one note, let Ken play off the synthesizer for 30 seconds.
Yeah, and then that was like 15 seconds of crowd at the end. So again, you're really talking about like 3 minutes of music, and you get two solos in that time. I mean, they actually squeezed really a lot of stuff into that song.
it's kind of like easy living, only a little more manly.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. It. Very energetic. That was a great version. I dig it.
Yeah, I always did like this song.
Yeah, Dave, you sold me on this album. I have to say, now that we've reviewed the proper album, we're still going to do the medley, but now that we've reviewed the proper album, I can say honestly, I've enjoyed every song, every bit of it.
But you need to go back, put on some headphones, have your favorite tea, wine, or beer, or whatever you do. Listen to it, start to finish. Skip the medley, because we're not there yet. We do that before we hook up next, so you're in the groove.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the energy that these guys have on stage, the passion for the music. I mean, there's difference between seeing a band that comes out and plays the songs they've written and a band that brings them to life.
It's just one of these really well put together, sonically quality type albums. I mean, it's not really complicated. There are no, think about other rock bands and stuff that they do. I mean, the instruments there are, complexities of the songs. Think of like Dreamweaver, or think of bands that are really complex and do all kinds. This is really, really only you. I mean, it's uniquely Uriah Heep, but the songs are very emotive, and as Ken will tell you, or would have told you, if you ask him this question, they're not very complicated. Yeah. They're extremely well executed.
Mm-hmm.
This band was all about feeling. I love these guys. And this album is like the quintessential for me. This is the best they've ever sounded. But when you hear them now, and they're just as they were then, they're just different, as I said before. And I'm not trying to kiss anybody's butt or anything, because I'm involved with them. But what they did back then, the guys that produced this album did such a great job. It's so fun and easy to listen to, and the songs are great. So that's why I'm into it. And that's why you got to go back and check the whole thing out before you hook up again.
Well, and I think you brought up a great point of the real, foundational reason of why I love this band so much throughout all the years and the different changes and styles and everything else is that they've always played with some level of emotion in all of their stuff. I've never felt like they're like, well, we got to record this song, so let's just record it. I've always found something in the performance or, in the writing that I could latch on to, even if it was a song I didn't particularly care for. There's always something about it that, wow, that passage really made me feel something, or, that made me raise my eyebrow and wonder what they meant. And if bands are just playing straightforward, oh, here we go. Now we're going to do the riff. Now we're going to do the chorus. Now we're going to do the backing for the solo. And it's just like piecing puzzle pieces together because that's what you're supposed to do. You don't get that. You don't get that curiosity about what they meant by something or why they phrased something a certain way, whether it be lyrically or musically. You just don't care. But with these guys, there's that, I feel just a depth in the music that I don't feel with a lot of other bands.
I totally agree. I mean, when you think about all the stuff you've listened to over the years, not everybody's a Uriah Heep fan, right? So they're missing out. We're not. But everyone has their favorites. And when I think of all the bands that I've been attracted to and they've had an impact on me, there's probably four, and Uriah Heep, obviously number one. But the other guys I listen to too are the same type of thing for me. It's all very emotive. It doesn't have a whole lot to do with me with technique. It's about the way the song is done.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily hear words all the time. I don't really care because it's about the music for me and it's the way it sounds to me. These guys just have it all. They still have it all. But this album to me is like number one. I'm taking it with me. It's coming with me.
I could certainly see why, though. I mean, the passion and the energy from like the studio versions to these versions, it's like they said, yeah, it was really cool what we wrote. What could we do with it? What else is in this song that we haven't found yet? And obviously they'd been touring for a little while before they recorded this, so they were very comfortable with all the songs. You can tell there's really no flaws in the performance. I mean, maybe a little something here and there, but for the most part, this is a really flawless combination of shows.
I sure think so.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done.
I would agree with that. And we'll see what happens, how we feel when we get to the last song, the rock and roll medley, starting on the next episode. Thank you, Dave, for joining me for this one. It's been a joy doing this season with you, I have to say, and thank you guys for listening.
Thank you for having me. This has been a hoot. I really enjoyed it. Seriously enjoyed it.
It's great stuff, and I really do understand why this album has the depth of meaning to you that it does.
Good. We'll go back and listen to it. It's awesome.
That I will. Well, we'll be back, guys, I guess it'll be tomorrow with the rock and roll medley, at least the first part of it. And we'll see what you guys think. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, do something good for yourself, and do something good for someone else, will you? Thanks, guys. Cheers.
See you, Scott.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!